What's up, Earth Rockers? It's your boy Shovatar here. Talk again about Julius mode, although this time it's going to be a little bit different. For one thing, my fucking window is closed this time, so you're not going to have to deal with street sounds while I'm trying to talk about the only thing about Dawn of Sorrow that I actually enjoy, that being Julius mode. Also different, in that I am not actually Julius here. I am Yoko, the lady. Like I mentioned already in my last Julius mode video, Julius mode of Dawn of Sorrow is conceptually based around Dracula's Curse, with multiple playable characters who you can swap between. But for various reasons that I've outlined, I thought it would be fun to try to play the games as beat Julius mode as much as is possible to do with one character at a time. Because I feel like if you force yourself to overcome these challenges with all these different characters, then it forces you also to learn what the full capabilities of those characters actually are. In keeping with the Dracula's Curse comparison, Yoko is, of course, conceptually corresponds conceptually with Sypha from Dracula's Curse. Spellcasters, short-range cane, mace attack for her default attack. 3 spells, fire, lightning, and ice. In Dracula's Curse, Sypha was part of this overall paradigm with the alternate playable characters, besides the main one, Trevor, where basically they excelled at different things. And in Dracula's Curse, Sypha excelled at combat. She had like these amazing combat tools. The ability to solve problems combat-wise that the other companions couldn't do, that even Trevor couldn't. And Yoko is not necessarily better at combat than Julius or Alucard necessarily. I mean, it depends. Her pure raw damage output is, I think, probably higher than both of them if you're positioned correctly. But that's sort of an important caveat, is the correct positioning and the correct timing. Overall, though, she does not play like Sypha, because the big thing about Sypha is that Sypha did not have any extra movement options, the way that other playable characters in Dracula's Curse did, like Grant and Alucard. Yoko, however, does. Yoko is more like Maria in Rondo of Blood, in that she has this very powerful combat and also has higher movement. I don't know if she necessarily runs faster than Julius or Alucard. I can't really tell. It doesn't seem like she does. But her backdash takes her much farther, and you're going to see me do that pretty much every time I go through a door. I'm going to, like, turn around. Well, most of the time, anyway. I'm going to try to turn around and, like, roll backwards through. Just so that way I'm, like, the momentum's just, like, carrying me through the loading zone. I don't know if it's actually that faster. I think it was just something that, like, I did because it felt faster, and it just seemed... It was, like, fun to do. I don't know. Actually, something that I should mention that I'd forgotten about until I started watching this footage, which is important, is that her combat actually is better than Julius and Alucard, not necessarily because of the high damage of the fire spell, which is what I'm going to be using for most of the early game, but also because her melee attack heals her. And in Julius mode, of course, there's no inventory, there's no potions. The only sources of healing under normal circumstances are save stations. But here with Yoko, if you ever take too much, if you ever take any damage, you can just heal it back off with your melee attack. Interesting conceptually. I'm surprised I'm saving here. Okay, good. I'm not... Okay, good. The reason I didn't want to save during these Julius mode runs is so that way if I failed, I could just go right back to... and I needed to restart. I could just go back to the file select screen and go from there. Interestingly enough, the melee attack that heals you is the function of the Succubus spell in the Succubus buff spell in Aria of Sorrow, and in Dawn of Sorrow, the Succubi in the Pinnacle actually disguise themselves as Yoko. So there's some thematic illusions going on here. In terms of, like, how it feels to play, Yoko is really fun to play, and it's mostly because of the backdash, because it really is, like, so much more... It's so much more horizontal distance than the Julius backdash, to the point that you really feel like you're flying through the air. It feels honestly more like Maria's roll attack from, or not attack, but Maria's rolling movements from Rondo of Blood than it does a backdash, which is really interesting. There's no other that hasn't really, honestly, since Harmony of Dissonance with juiced Belmonts dashing around, there hasn't really been anything like that. And here I have to switch to Julius because this is a no touchscreen mod, meaning that I have to break the blocks with melee attacks, and for some reason Yoko's melee attack doesn't break blocks. Alucard's does, and Julius's does, but for some reason Yoko's doesn't. I don't know why. Another thing that makes Yoko pretty fun to play, honestly, is just that her sprite is great. It feels so like I love how she casts. I love how she looks. I love all like the little details for the animation. Like you'll notice that when she crouches, like when she crouches, it's like her skirt rides up and she pulls it back down again. I think there's lots of I appreciate little attentions to detail like that. I think the guys who made this had some priorities that they wanted to adhere to. Anyway, so that's basically how Yoko differs from Julius. I guess I'll talk about the three spells. Like I already said, I'm going to be using fire for most of the early game anyway. Actually, I think for most of the run in general, I use fire, and I do that because it has such high damage. And the range is like long enough. It's not as long as Julius's whip, but it's long enough to safely approach enemies and use it to kill them. Her other two attacks are more situational, I would say, because they each have a sort of like a big problem with them. They're both really powerful. Both Ice and Lightning are really powerful, but they both each have a big problem. The problem with Ice is that it is directional, in that you'll summon 5 spikes of ice, there's a slight delay, and then they fly out. There's actually multiple problems with each of the other two spells. The problem with ice is that, number one, it's like directional. The spikes of ice like shoot in these 5 directions, and chances are if you're doing that, you're trying to hit something above you, and things that are above you can fly around. They can always just end up in a place where the ice spikes aren't. And then the other problem is that when you activate the ice spell, you are stuck in place. I can't believe this idiot hit me so much. That usually doesn't happen. You're stuck in place while the ice is... well, the ice spikes are like forming, and then while they shoot. Now, fortunately, if you start casting the ice spell in midair and then land, you can actually move around while it's finishing. You can actually even backdash, which I think I'll be doing on the Paranoia fight when I get there. So there's a little bit of technique that you can take advantage of to mitigate the movement problems with the ice spell. And I think the ice is probably the second best spell that Yoko has. Fire, I would say, is best just because it's cheap, it does a bunch of damage. The only thing you have to do is close distance, which, because Yoko has her really long backdash, it's not that risky. You can just jump in, fire, and then backdash immediately, and you'll be like halfway across the room. But what ice does is, ice just does a lot of damage. It does a lot of damage, and it does a lot of damage pretty fast, because the ice spikes move pretty fast, and also, if the enemy that you're fighting is like big enough, like their sprite is physically large enough, then the icicles will hit them multiple times. And I think the icicles are just designed to do a bunch of damage by default, so them hitting something twice is going to do like mega damage. I think you'll see that on the Gurgoth fight. Here, I'm fairly sure Dario takes increased damage from ice, because I know he takes reduced damage from fire, which would make sense. So I think that's... So I'm mostly going to be using that for this fight. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. You can see I can like air strafe around while I'm casting it. Oh, yeah. See, there he faked me out. That's Dario's Fire Pillar spell. Usually, it's like he'll do one close, one far away, and then one in between. But then sometimes, instead of a third one in between the first two, he'll do a third one that's spawning on your position again, and that always catches me off guard because he usually doesn't do that. I've had plenty of experience fighting the bosses in Dawn of Sorrow, and that's unusual for him to do that. Ultimately, though, he's not that hard. Yoko doesn't really struggle with any of the bosses that much, in my opinion. Um, the fact that she can heal herself whenever she wants, the fact that she has high damage means that the boss's fights aren't going to last that long, and it's pretty easy for her to find safe positions because of the fact that the ice spell gives her an option. The option that the ice spell gives her is the option to just sit a million miles away and just fire projectiles at enemies that they can't at them while they can't hit you. So that's why fire is better for general usage, like killing normal enemies in the world, while frost is generally better with boss fights, because with regular enemies, like one fire does so much damage that one fire spell will kill a lot of enemies. Like that's a perfect example right there. Bosses, of course, are not like that, so with bosses you need something that's more consistent and more safe, and that's sort of the option that ice provides you. Lightning is weird. In Dracula's Curse, Sypha's lightning spell is like the most overpowered thing in the whole game. Because it homes in on things, it does a bunch of damage. And of course there's no MP in Dracula's Curse, there's just hearts, and lightning costs 1 heart the way that all Sypha's other spells cost 1 heart, so cost doesn't factor into it. But cost is actually the big problem with Yoko's lightning spell. It costs a lot of MP. It's very, very restrictively expensive. And the second problem is that the lightning orbs themselves don't move very fast. They just kind of like slowly wander across the screen towards whatever it is you're trying to hit. Whereas with the ice spell, once you finish casting the ice spell, the icicles move really fast. Like, you cast it, and then it'll be finished, and then you'll hit whatever it is you were trying to hit. With lightning orbs, it's like you're spending a bunch of mana to eventually hit something far away from you. And the big problem that I kept on running into is that if you swap to a different spell in the middle of a certain... If you start casting a particular spell, and then you swap to a different spell in the middle of it, it'll actually cancel the spell. So something that happened to me a couple times is I'd cast a lightning spell, and then while the lightning orbs were traveling towards something, I'm thinking about something else. I'm thinking about what I want to do next. So I would swap to, like, fire or something, and if you do that, the lightning orbs disappear. So you've now wasted all your mana if you do that. There's, I think, a couple spots in the game where I'm going to use lightning. I think I use lightning on the fish boss and then maybe like 1 or 2 other spots, but mostly it's going to be fire and ice, because there's just nothing that lightning does that was pretty cool. There's just nothing that lightning does that frost can't do, pretty much. I mean, unless you're trying to hit something that's at a really weird angle, the frost icicles aren't quite oriented towards. But aside from that, it's like whatever. Puppet Master. This boss is kind of tricky on Yoko. The issue with the Puppet Master is always how you, on Julius mode anyway, is always killing the mannequins in time. Basically getting to the mannequins and dealing with the dolls. And here, I actually should have been prioritizing clearing out the dolls more, because I was kind of out of practice with this boss, because the way that you fight this boss in the boss rush is totally different from how you fight it in the main game. Because in the boss rush you do so much damage that if you just run up to it and just blast a couple fires into it, then it just like dies before it can really do anything. But here you have to actually engage with its mechanics, and I want to mention something that I brought up before in my Julius video that I didn't really clarify properly, which is those little mannequins that he summons and tries to put into the Iron Maidens. It really seems there like they oh, I applaud. It really seems there like they are destroyed based off of how many times you hit them, rather than how much damage you actually do. Because on Julius, I don't know why I didn't just say this, but I guess I was like unsure of myself, is that on Julius, I swear that I would have these situations where like I'd hit them with 3 whip shots and they wouldn't die, but then I'd hit them with like a whip shot and then a whip flail and then a whip shot and a whip flail, which is 4 hits but less damage, and then they would die, which would suggest that their destruction is based off of hits and not damage, and I feel like the same thing happened there. I feel like I was hitting them with enough damage from fire. Well, the fire was doing like 69 there or something. 69 times 2, 138. And then I was then, and like that for some reason somehow wasn't killing them, but then hitting them with 4 mace swings, and the mace swing was like 29, which would be, what, 107? That was killing them. So I think that is how it works, and I don't know why it's like that. I guess it's to force you to really... I guess it's to force you to interact with the mechanic, but you have to interact with the mechanic anyway. Like, you have to kill them. I don't know why they would design them like that, or if that's even intentional. Because I swear to God, that's not how they work in the boss rush. In the boss rush, they die faster, which would suggest that it's a damage thing, but that doesn't seem to be the case. I don't know. That thing always fucking hits me. I just always forget that it's there. Like, no matter how many times I played through this game, I always forgot about the fucking the fucking barrel skeletons. There you go. That's more like it. Yeah, the boss rush on Yoko, I think I'll upload it probably the day after I upload this. I don't know damage the boss rush on Yoko, and there's a couple reasons for that, which I'll talk about as I get to the bosses in this run that turn out to be a big problem in the boss rush. Sorry. I keep on adjusting my distance from the microphone because I'm not used to it. See, that's what I'm talking about when I talk about like shit the Yoko can do that's really cool. She can like fly across the ground and like fly through the air. I actually wish that Yoko and Julius had like air movement options like Alucard has, because Alucard has bat form, but then he also has like his Alucard like super jump from Symphony of the Night, where he like flies up in the air. And I don't think it would have been the end of the world if like Julius had that, or Yoko for that matter. I mean, what difference does it make, right? Yeah, Yoko can slide kick, but she can't do like the dive kick through the air the way Julius has, and she doesn't have Julius's like little triple jump, which is unfortunate. Look at that. It's actually crazy how much better this Bloody Tears remix is than the chapel music that plays in the main game. Like, the chapel music in the Dawn of Sorrow main game is so fucking boring. Which is a problem that a lot of these Metroid-style Castlevanias have, is the music is kind of boring. And then whenever like a remix from the old games comes in, it's like always good. I mean, the Julius boss fight music from Aria of Sorrow is like the best shit ever, and it's just a remix of 2 older Castlevania songs. Not that all the music in Dawn of Sorrow is bad. The lab music is good, but a lot of it's just kind of like, it's just such a dramatic difference. The Dimitri fight on Yoko it's very like rhythm based, where you don't want to give him frost or lightning, you just want to give him fire, because you can get into like a rhythm where you fight him where it's like, you know, he's gonna shoot and then you jump in and shoot after he does. The reason I'm fucking up here is I'm trying to hit him before he shoots instead of waiting until after. Yeah, this is what I should be doing. But my timing's not quite down. This is actually a pretty bad Dimitri fight. It took me a long time to figure out that he seems to only backdash like that in response to normal attacks. He doesn't seem to do it in response to like sub-weapon usages or spells there. And yeah, what I should have done there is been smarter about jumping in and shooting fire at him after he shoots fire at me. You just want to give Dimitri whatever attack is the easiest to avoid, whatever that happens to be. And for Yoko, it's fire. This guy's kind of just like a non-entity. I was speaking of music that sucks. I think the first boss fight music in Dawn of Sorrow sucks. That's this music. It's especially bitter because this is the song that plays in the boss rush, so I had to hear it like over and over and over again. Until, well, actually, I did eventually change, I would just play different music in the background. I would just turn the game music off and then play different music while I was doing attempts. So when you see my Alucard and Yoko boss rush videos, it's going to be playing different music for that reason. Yeah, like, why not play this music during the fucking boss rush? I played this fucking, like, the annoying, boring-ass fucking initial boss music. What's interesting about both Yoko and Sypha is that I think that the conceit is that their regular melee attacks are supposed to be worse than Julius's, but in both cases there were actually niche situations, or the Julius's and then with Trevor's, but in both Dracula's Curse and here in Dawn of Sorrow, there are niche instances where Yoko and Sypha's attacks are better than Trevor and Julius's, because an element of Castlevania gameplay that was sort of slowly whittled down. I mean, it's still present and it's still important, but it's not as, that's pretty fucking cool. It's not as like defining as it was, is the rhythm of the whip swing, where in Castlevania 1, Simon has this like rhythm, this wind up to his whip, and Trevor has the same thing in Castlevania 3, although I think it's slightly faster. That's how it feels, faster anyway. But in Castlevania 3, Sypha's cane attack is like almost instant. Maybe there's like an imperceptible wind up for it, but it's almost instant, and it has okay range, like not the same range that Trevor's does, but kind of like, you know, it's not bad. So there are actually a couple spots in Dracula's Curse where having an instant, like Sypha's instant attack is actually better than Trevor's whip. Although, of course, for general combat, the whip is almost always better, because it does more damage. And then with Yoko, it's a similar kind of thing where I feel like it's easier for her to hit those imps than it is for Julius to do it. Yeah, this is one of the few parts where lightning is really useful, because there actually the enemy was so close that lightning got to him before ice would have. And with that disc armor there, you just have to kill him before he actually throws the disc down, because once he throws the discs, it's like almost impossible to actually dodge it. Fucking hunchbacks. Ah. It's amazing that she does all this in high heels. I guess most Castlevania characters don't dress in ways that are particularly practical. Another thing that I should mention about Yoko, because I'm not sure if this is true or not. In Dracula's Curse, Sypha takes more damage than Trevor, due to the way that the math, like HP and damage, work out in Dracula's Curse. That's not always a huge deal, but it is true that Sypha takes more damage than Trevor. And then in Rondo of Blood, Maria takes more damage than Richter. I don't know if Yoko takes more damage than Julius or Alucard do. I never really I never really noticed, because it wasn't like... It's a lot easier to notice in Dracula's Curse when you have 16 HP, and where things will do like 4 or 5 damage to you. That's very clear. When you have 336 HP, and things are doing like 27 or maybe 25, then it's different. So this was actually a mistake. I should not have used Lightning on Gurgoth. I should have only used Frost, because Lightning is doing huge damage to him here, but Frost would actually be more mana efficient. Lightning was only doing, like, what? That was 27 times, maybe 5 or 6, so, like, what? 135? Whereas I'm pretty sure Frost would do, yeah, almost 200, 198, so... And 198 damage with way less a mana cost, so Lightning was actually not the most efficient choice there. And I realized that, like, mid-fight. The Gurgoth fight is easier on Yoko than it is with anyone else, in my opinion, purely because she has her slide kick takes her further across the ground. Gurgoth is hardest on Alucard because Alucard can't slide kick at all. And then like Yoko, and then then Soma and Julius, I'm pretty sure are almost the same in terms of the distance their slide kicks. The only problem, of course, is that if Gurgoth corners you and does like the gas attack, Yoko has no like vertical movement options, so she can't like just jump over it if that happens. She's also not as good at avoiding that attack, although because she can't jump over it the way Yoko or the way Julius and Soma and Alucard kind of can. Actually, no, Soma can't like jump over shit at this point in the game. I think he can use the Medusa Head Soul to jump and hover over some attacks, but that would require farming something. So it's like if you have it, you have it. You know. Unfortunately, I think I wanted to do here what I did on Julius, which was just climb up the tower without swapping to Alucard, but I think she can't quite make it. Yeah, I have to swap to Alucard. Have her get carried up by birds like fucking Maria. Although she's not a Renard, she's a Belnatus, whatever. Maria's such a fucking weird character. In the if you just look at the in the larger context of how the Castlevania series progressed after like Rondo and Symphony of the Night, she's just kind of an anomaly. Because with all these other characters that have been introduced in Aria and Dawn of Sorrow, it's like I'm the new Belmont, and it's like I'm the new Trevor, I'm the new Sypha. I'm the new Alucard, except I'm just the same Alucard. But then Maria is like this weird fourth thing that doesn't really fit. Speaking of weird fourth things that don't really fit, I read somewhere that actually Hammer was considered at one point to be a playable character in Julius mode to sort of correspond with Grant. Because there is no Grant equivalent here, really. And I'm kind of two minds about that. On the one hand, I think 4 characters might actually be too much. Yeah, so there... I should really explain that. I didn't know if the floating platform was down there or not. I thought maybe it was, and if it was, I would land on it, and if not, I would be able to just walk right into the save room and heal, so that was just kind of... I just took a risk. And it made me look like an idiot. God, I'm so bad at this, man. Maybe I'm just out of practice. There's just like, you just have so little time. And all this shit, see, okay. I guess I should have just swung preemptively. I mean, I can never tell if, like, if this is an issue with my reaction time or just with human reaction time in general. Probably my reaction time, because my reaction time is actually pretty bad. Yeah, 4 characters I think would be a little bit much. Because in Dracula's Curse, there were 3 other characters besides Trevor, but you could only have one of them with you at any given time, so... It never felt like the game was giving you too many options at once. You had to make strategic choices about who you were going to take. But with Julius mode, I think having to like cycle through 4 people would be too much. And if they were going to cut anyone, I hate to say it, but it's kind of the same way I feel about the Castlevania TV show from Netflix. I haven't watched it, but I do know that Grant is not in it, and I do have to begrudgingly agree. As much as I love Grant, if you were going to cut one of the 4 playable characters from Dracula's Curse for some kind of dramatic, for the purposes of like condensing something down, then you would cut Grant, unfortunately. Although wait, that Castlevania show has like 4 fucking seasons, right? Okay, well, if you're gonna do 4 seasons of Dracula's Curse, there's actually no excuse to not have Grant in it. I forgot about that, actually. But for Julius mode and Dawn of Sorrow, I can understand why Hammer isn't here. And to be totally honest with you, I'm actually kind of relieved, because that means 1 fewer character for me to try to do the boss rush with. Dawn of Sorrow was really rough to get through. Like, Julius mode was fun, but doing the Soma shit was hard. Doing the boss rush was like... It was really, really rough. Especially the Julius one, because I was expecting it to be a lot easier. And it's just like... but part of the reason it was so much of a problem was just because the main game just kind of drained so much of my enthusiasm. Like, there's a certain... I just think I have a certain level of tolerance for these things, and the main game really kind of pulled it down and made the game feel, like, old. Like, by the time I started on Julius mode, I was already kind of sick of the game, so then I get to Julius mode and it's like, oh, here's, like, an actual game that's actually good, but I'm all, like, Dawn of Sorrowed out now. So it's like they made me eat... It's like the restaurant served its worst appetizer before its best main course. If I could use a food analogy for a second here. Zephyr Fight. Very, very interesting on Sypha. It's similar to how I play it on in the Julius mode boss rush footage, where it's just about keeping distance. It's just about always respecting him. And taking advantage of the fact that Sypha has such a long backdash. The reason this caught me off guard is because usually when he winds up his little when he stands still and does the little like he's getting ready to do some attack, he like right there, he'll either, it's like if you attack him he'll do a dash, but then if you don't attack him he'll summon the daggers. But if you like double jump and just kind of hang in the air far enough away from him, he tends to not do anything. So what happened with the dagger attack there is he charged it up, and then I double jumped, and I was expecting him to not do anything, but then I guess I got too close to him towards the very end, and he activated the dagger attack. So that kind of fucked me up and caused me to take a lot of damage that I didn't mean to. And prior to that, I backdashed in the wrong direction a couple times too, so that's just kind of... That was a really bad Zephyr fight, but I got through it. And Frost... Ice is definitely the best. It's like the only option for that fight, because Lightning just takes too long. Zephyr is a really cool fight. I was very annoyed with it as I was doing my boss rush attempts, and I do think that it could stand a little bit of tweaking. Zephyr has a bad habit of putting you in no-win situations where like it's impossible to make an intelligent decision, but I do like how dangerous it is and how it's really just constantly about testing your ability to maintain distance, which is an important thing to test. I think there's actually another way into the caverns that does not require Alucard. I don't think I necessarily had to go this way and turn into Alucard. So I actually kind of wish I had looked a little bit harder to find the alternate way into the caverns, because like I said, the whole conceit was only Yoko and only swapping to Alucard when it was absolutely necessary, but I guess that's an exception. That's the kind of thing that, like, I don't know, I care about just for, like OCD reasons, but it doesn't really matter. Oh, I had to use the bathroom here, yeah. Unlike in my Julius footage, I actually remembered to cut it out this time. I don't know why. So here's actually the one time when I do use lightning. It's to kill this guy, because he stays on the screen for long enough for like the lightning orbs to really just like wander around inside of his hitbox, and because just like the way he moves, it's awkward to try to hit him with anything else. And here I actually fucked up and cast lightning as he was moving away from me and moving like off of the screen, so he didn't die as fast as he should have. But Oh well. I'm applauding again. Yeah, Yoko's. This is what I mean when I talk about Yoko's animations being funny. Is like, if you press up to activate her sub weapons, she'll like fold her arms, and her boobs will bounce. But if you just tap the button to like start the animation, then she's just like bringing her hands together in front of her, and it looks like she's clapping, which is funny. Actually, funny, you might have already noticed this. I'll point it out next time I get to a warp room, but she actually doesn't have the animations, or the like, I don't know what it is, the animation that Julius has. When Julius uses a warp zone, he'll like throw his arms out and it's hard to describe, but he has a special pose that he gets into when he uses a warp thing. And Soma and I think Alucard have that too, but Yoko doesn't, so when she gets into it, she just does the sub-weapon animation over and over again. Just pretty funny. ...2005, man. Crazy world back then. For some fucking reason, the fish, like, take reduced damage from fire. Like, okay, and I know what you're thinking. It's because they live in water, but nothing else in this level is like that. Like, that monster is, like, made of water, and it gets fucking one-shot by fire. So, I don't get it. I wonder if Frost would be faster to kill that thing with, if it, like... When it forces you away from it with the little, like, the vines that come out of the ground attack. I don't know. This part of the game was so fucking annoying. It's like... It's because the fishmen will do this thing sometimes where they'll, like, walk into you and then they won't leave. They'll just, like, stay on top of you and, like, your attacks don't hit them because they're, like, inside you, and you have to face one of two directions to try to hit them, and they're not in either direction because they're inside of you, and then they just, like, don't move, and they just keep hitting you. Most of the general combat sections of Julius mode are not dangerous, I would say. That's especially the case in Yoko, because Yoko heals herself with a regular attack, so if you ever feel like you're in danger, you can just make a point of using the melee weapon more to heal yourself. It's mostly the boss fights that are dangerous in Dawn of Sorrow. That goes for Julius mode and the regular main game. That goes for most of these Metroid-style Castlevanias in general, actually. Like, if I think about the classic, like the classic Castlevanias, like, the boss fights were hard, but if I'm thinking back to the things that would kill me in the classic Castlevania games, it was like, a lot of the times it would just be certain combat sections. Like in Dracula's Curse, like Sypha 6-3, or, Alucard 7, like Alucard 7-6, Alucard 7-7, Alucard, mostly just those two. And then, of course, fucking 9-4 and 9-2 on the JP version, and, like, level 9 in general. Even in Castlevania 1, like, Castlevania 1 has some pretty hard boss fights. The Igor, the Frankenstein, the Grim Reaper, Dracula, but the thing about all the fights I just listed is that they all have the same solution, which is the Holy Water. Except for Dracula Phase 1. Dracula Phase 1 you have to actually play it, but if you figure out how to not get telefragged by him, then the fight is not hard, in my opinion. You just have to learn a single timing, and then he just dies. And then Phase 2 can just get stun-locked by the Holy Water. But the things that gave me trouble in Castlevania 1 to the very end were like Stage 4-1 or 6-1 with the fucking bats on the bridge. Like, those were the hard parts of C1. And in these later games, It's basically just like smooth sailing until the boss fights. And I think that just is a consequence of the game design, because the only way, like the reason why 6-3 and 9-4 and all those other levels or stages are so hard in the earlier games is because you're taking like a quarter of your health with every hit. So all that needs to happen is for something to hit you 4 times, whether it's a boss or whether it's a regular, or whether it's a boss or whether it's a bat, and you die. So, and that was just, that made sense for the way that those games were designed. But then with these Metroid style Castlevanias, it's more like they don't want to discourage exploration, so they want to give you a lot of health and a lot of room for error, meaning that regular enemies really can't do that much damage. Should I even talk about this boss? This boss, like, fucking sucks, but on Yoko it's not that bad because she can do a lot of damage with frost, so it tends to die fast. Although it actually does, the fact that Yoko has no, like, advanced jumping options means that it's easier than ever to just get, like, randomly hit by the hand attack. Yeah, like right here, I have actually no good options. There was nothing I could have done there about that. Maybe if I'd stayed on the ground the whole time and, like, I could have barely double jumped over it, but Yoko has no triple jump, she has no, like, super jump, she has no dive kick, she can't dive kick out of the air, so, like, if the hand comes towards her and it's too close, she's just fucked. Very, very unfortunate. I don't know how many of these bosses were tested with, like, every Julius mode character. I have a very strong suspicion that Abaddon was not tested on Yoko, by the way. But I'll talk about that when I get to it. But yeah, the overall design of the game, regular enemies are almost never going to kill you. It's going to be like spikes and bosses. Because they wanted to make, because the bosses are not like an exploration concern. They're just totally self-contained encounters, which is not the way that they are actually in the classic Castlevania games. Because in classic Castlevania games, each level is kind of its own thing, each stage is kind of its own thing, so the boss fight could be considered as part of the whole, as like just a part of the whole level. Well, not could be considered, they are a part of the whole level, they're not like just self-contained things, so whether a level is hard has to take both the boss fight and the regular combat into account, when that's not really the case in these later games. In these later games, there aren't really levels at all. They're just kind of places. Although I tend to think of them as levels. Like, what's a good example? Like in level 9 in Castlevania 3 is a great example of a level where the level itself is what's hard, and then the boss is like really easy. And then the reason why the Grim Reaper is so hard in Castlevania 1 is because he comes after the fucking Grim Reaper hallway with the knights and the Medusa heads. It's like a 1-2 punch of getting your shit pushed in. With these games, it's more like the enemies are just cannon fodder between you and the bosses. Which, again, that's sort of like a necessity based off of how the games are designed. And I don't really have a problem with it. I mean, I don't miss being killed by bats. I don't miss taking a quarter of my health from a random bird, or a fucking like RNG skull flying through the air necessarily, but it does make a lot of these combat sections feel like, I don't know, kind of tedious. Like, enemies are more like, they're not challenges, they're just like obstacles. They're just like in your way. They're there to give you like XP. I mean, you can't have a game with no enemies and with just boss fights. I understand that. I think that's why it's so important to me. I think that's why the pacing in these games is so important to me. because either the enemies are dangerous or they're not interesting, right? So, and in either of those situations, you want them to die really fast. Like, combat with bosses is whatever. Combat with bosses can take a long time, but combat with regular enemies should not last very long, and that's kind of why I'm resentful of difficulty modulations that increase enemy health or decrease player damage, because that fast pace is super important, and it's a big part of what makes the games fun. There's nothing fun about, like, tediously chopping through basically non-threatening enemies just to get through a room. I mentioned this because Dawn of Sorrow's hard mode had that, Aria of Sorrow's hard mode had that, and I'm looking ahead to the other DS games, and I noticed that the hard modes for Portrait of Ruin, at least, kind of has something like that. But I'm not going to talk about Portrait of Ruin yet. So, Paranoia on Yoko is one of the two bosses that I think you can't really consistently clear without taking any damage. Because her situation is similar to the situation with Julius, where Julius doesn't have bat form, Julius doesn't have a super jump. So if Paranoia picks a mirror pattern that fires a laser along the floor, which can happen whether you bait the final laser shot up into the air or not, you could still get a laser pattern that sends a laser across the floor. If that happens on Julius, you have, you have a jump, you have a double jump, and then you have like a little triple jump, and using all three of those jumps can let you kind of hover in a certain spot in midair for maybe long enough to avoid the laser, but Yoko doesn't have any triple jump to take advantage of, so with her, she just has a jump and then a double jump to try to outlast an entire laser pattern, if it's unfortunate, which is, like, probably doable, but it's very, very hard. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Maybe, I think if I went all the way to the other mirror and, like, crouched next to it, I maybe could have survived. But, like, and to be totally fair, I didn't really bait the mirror very well there. So that was kind of my fault. But this boss is just designed like shit in the first place. Like, if the mirror patterns weren't random garbage, then it wouldn't even be a problem. But I barely survive. I kill him before I get a second mirror phase, which is the most important thing. And that's why ice is so important. And you'll notice that I was doing something there that I talked about before, which is that I start using ice and then I back roll out of it before it finishes casting. So that's really important to do on the Paranoia fight. What you want to try to do on the Paranoia fight on Yoko is shoot icicles when he's directly above you, because that's when the icicle will hit him twice. When he's literally directly above you. It can hit him twice if it's going diagonally and he happens to be moving in the same direction as it, but that's not really under your control. Yeah, here are the I didn't mention this earlier because I was talking about something else, but yeah, here are the succubi disguised as Yoko, which I don't know. Do you think if you're Yoko, do you think you find this flattering, or what? How do you react to discovering that this is what these succubi have been disguising themselves as? It's got to be a little bit off-putting. Yeah, this is what I mean when I talk about Frost being really good. See, look at that. This I think, or did I misinterpret that? No, okay. So the chimera there, the thing with the scorpion tail, the icicle hit him twice. And what I used to do in my earlier attempts of my earlier like runs with Yoko is I'd kill that thing with lightning, and I'd get into this room with like half the MP that I have right now. So it's really interesting actually that they managed to. They took like a character who's like a Sypha analog, and they made Sypha's best spell into Yoko's worst spell. Just by incorporating, like, MP costs. Okay, that... What exactly happened there? Because it seemed... That almost seemed like... Because I don't think that thing is even supposed to spawn until I get down there. Maybe I was like just at the edge of the radius where it spawned and it like wound up some attack that I couldn't see and then hit me? I don't know. I really can't explain why that happened. Frost is good at killing the fucking annoying guards with the shields, which is another enemy that I think probably shouldn't exist. The way that Freeze, I guess if you don't know anything about Dracula's Curse, this would be interesting to bring up. And by the way, if you are interested at all in Dracula's Curse, I have a whole bunch of Dracula's Curse videos on my channel, which you can check out, and you can either just watch the footage, which is more interesting, I think, than the alternative, which is listening to my commentary with my terrible old headset microphone. And no game sound, because I didn't... It wasn't that I didn't know, necessarily, how to incorporate game sound into a commentary video. I think it was more just that I didn't really care at the time. Because as soon as I started caring, I figured out how to do it, so... But I still think that those Dracula's Curse videos are like some of the best gameplay I've ever uploaded, so... There's that going for it. So it's like it's like the highest skill gameplay on the channel, but the most boring videos and the most ridiculous thumbnails. Where I wasn't even like making a thumbnail. I would just take some pre-suggested thumbnail from the ones that YouTube gave me, and then I would throw a bunch of like stock images and like schizo text over it. So I kind of want to go back and change those, but on the other hand, it's like, I don't know. I think that's kind of its own distinct style. I think it lets you know what you're in for. But to get back to the larger point that I was making, I should actually talk about this boss fight real quick. This is like really easy on Yoko, and it's easy because Frost almost always hits this guy twice, and it does like a million damage. So no matter what goes on in the fight, the fight's over really fast. And plus Yoko has enough movement and enough mobility to avoid all of his attacks. Was that a no damage? I actually don't know. I was busy talking about Dracula's Curse. I didn't see if I got hit at the start. I think that was a no damage. I mean, obviously, as is always the case in the Agony fight, if Yoko gets hit, she's going to take a lot of damage, but it's not that hard to not get hit. And the fight's over fast, so the number of chances you have to get hit are much lower. But the whole reason I talk about all this is that the way that Freeze works in Dracula's Curse is Sypha freezes all the enemies around her, and then if she hits them with her cane, they get insta-killed. The trade-off is that they don't drop any hearts, which can be a problem for Sypha, because she relies on hearts like really heavily to do any real damage. But it's pretty good in a lot of contexts. The main reason I don't use it that much in my videos is just because it's almost always smarter to just have lightning on. So they changed that in Dawn of Sorrow, which makes sense because in the context of a game like this, where enemies have so much health, creating like a freeze insta-kill spell would be a little bit too... I think it would be very hard to find a reason to ever use anything else in normal combat. And, like I said, normal enemies are not usually the problem in Dawn of Sorrow, so having a spell that's only useful on enemies and not bosses would feel pretty bad, since bosses are the most dangerous things you encounter. And if they had, and I'm glad also, and so it's probably smarter from a design perspective not to include old Freeze, and I'm glad that they didn't include it, because now I have new Freeze, and I don't know how the hell I would fight like Zephyr or Agony or or several other bosses without, or Paranoia, like, without freeze. I'd probably just have to use lightning and it would just take way longer. Because the damage efficiency would be worse, the damage over time would be worse. So I'm very glad they decided to do what they did with the ice spell. I'm also very glad that they decided to include a level up mechanic in Julius mode, because I don't do this on purpose, but I have a habit of, like, whenever I see an enemy on the screen, I just want to kill it. So, and it's very hard for me to get out of that habit. So the fact that I'm being rewarded for doing that is something that I appreciate. I bring that up because in like the Symphony of the Night alternate modes, like Richter mode and Maria mode, there's no reason to fight most enemies because there's not an experience mechanic. You can get more health through like energy tanks, and then that's about it. And even that's only actually applicable for Richter. On the Saturn version of Symphony of the Night Maria mode, there's no reason to do anything but just go right to the final boss, because you don't get any increases in power the whole time. Or health or anything else. Well, and then Maxime mode, you also never gain any more power or anything. But in Maxime mode, you can't rush to the final boss because they make you kill all the other bosses. Anyway, this is another good song, which is, again, a remix of an old song. It's a song from Haunted Castle, the game that I never played. Which, everybody says Haunted Castle sucks, so I guess I shouldn't feel like I missed out. Because I'm probably never, because like if I'm not going to play it during this whole like little Castlevania marathon, I'm probably never going to play it. And then again, people say Harmony of Dissonance is bad, and Harmony of Dissonance is like one of the best fucking games I've ever played, so... But I've heard that Haunted Castle is bad for like annoying reason, for basic gameplay reasons rather than conceptual reasons, where it's Castlevania obnoxious difficulty filtered through arcade obnoxious difficulty. I've seen screenshots of the game and I don't think it looks very good. I was dancing to the music while I waited for the slime to get out of the way. Come on, man. Gaben is a really weird... I used to have a lot of trouble fighting Gaben in Symphony of the Night because I just kind of had a hard time anticipating. Like it was deceptive. Like his movements are deceptively simple, where it's like you just need to start off above him, and then eventually he'll fly up into you, and you can just hit him, and you don't have to worry about it. But in Symphony of the Night, I was like constantly trying to chase after him, and then like falling down platforms. Fortunately, I think the big difference is that in Dawn of Sorrow, you'll notice that both of those rooms that had the Gabens in them, the Gaben, whatever, you start off at the top of the room, so they have to fly up towards you. Whereas a Symphony of the Night, it's much, much harder to fight them when you have to fly up towards them. So the Grim Reaper fight on Yoko is... it's hard. It's definitely harder than it is on Julius. But it's also... but it's also more forgiving of mistakes, because this is where Yoko's self-healing really becomes relevant, because the Grim Reaper has a habit of just kind of sitting there and letting you hit him. That's sort of exactly what's being demonstrated right here. Where I haven't taken any damage yet, so I haven't had a chance to heal anything, but if you think about how much I would have healed at this point if I had taken damage. Every swing is doing 5, and he's taking so... and like I'm getting in so many swings. So, yeah, now we're going to see it. The downside, of course, is that you have to be really close to him to hit him with the swings, but if he's holding still, then whatever. And you might wonder why I'm only hitting him. Well, now I'm doing it to heal, but I was doing it before because I wanted to save my MP just for lightning on the scythe attack. His phase 1 scythe attack, this one, yeah. And I'm worried about conserving MP because of how expensive lightning is. And I also probably Yeah, I only want to use, and I want to use lightning for phase 2 also for his other scythe attack, his actually dangerous attack. Because this, honestly, my use of lightning to counteract that scythe attack is probably overkill. I could probably get rid of that stuff relatively safely with the mace, but my concern there is that I would have to get so close to the scythes to hit them. It seems like what I'm imagining happening is I hit the scythes like ahead of and above me, and then I get clipped by a scythe underneath me that like hits my feet or my like high heels or whatever. So that was really bad, but that actually could have been a lot worse because I took damage from a second sickle instead of taking damage from his big scythe, which means that I actually took about 68 less damage than I could have taken. So whatever. And look at that. I'm now back up into the 400s already. So this is what I mean when I talk about the fight being forgiving, where I may get to the end of this fight having taken in total like 500 damage, but because I'm healing up so much of it, like this is what makes Sypha, this is what makes Yoko good in general gameplay context. And I also suspect that this is why they maybe didn't worry so much about making her mobile, because they figured, well, you know, if she does get hit, then or give it, not making her mobile, she's plenty mobile, but giving her the tools to respond to some of the late game bosses. Like, it's really, really hard for Yoko to consistently not take damage from the phase 2 scythe attack that the Grim Reaper does. Julius has Grand Cross. Alucard can like teleport slash to kind of fuck with the targeting of the scythes. Yoko just kind of has to sit there and shoot lightning and hope that she hits something, which is not a consistent strategy. It might be a sufficient strategy for killing the Grim Reaper in the regular course of the game, but if you want to no damage him in the boss rush, which is what I consider doing, it's really hard to do that consistently on Yoko. And the Grim Reaper is one of 3 reasons why I didn't do that. The other one being paranoia, and the third one being Abaddon, which I'm going to talk about when I get to him. Yeah, Abaddon on Yoko is a really interesting... it's a really, really interesting fight, which I'm, of course, going to have to wait to talk about until we get there. Oh, this is worth talking about. Killing this big green demon is actually, it's like more feasible on Yoko than it is on anyone else, because her backdash moves so fast, she can actually like dodge these projectiles that are basically impossible to dodge on every other character. Not impossible, really hard, because they come at you so fast and from so many different angles, but Yoko can actually cover enough horizontal distance to get totally out of their range. Fighting these guys is kind of a pain in the ass, though. You have to just like do this and waste a bunch of MP, but whatever. Hey, I guess it's not really a waste if I'm using the MP to clear out the enemies that I need to clear out, right? Those fire pillars, I think I talked about this in my main game commentary, but I'm going to bring it up again because it's fucking annoying. I always assumed that the fire pillars were on like a global timer, but they're not. They just activate when you get close to them, and then they pause and then they activate again. But you have to like, so it forces you to wait. It's not like sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you don't. It's like you just have to stand there and fucking wait. This is... I didn't really talk about this in any of the other videos. This zone here, this little part of the game, the Abyss. So Aria of Sorrow ends in a similar way, where you go to like a weird other realm to fight the final boss. Excuse me. In Aria of Sorrow, though, the weird alternate realm is like vaguely resembles areas of Dracula's castle, whereas here it's just kind of like this weird netherworld. I guess this is just where demons come from, right? I like the ear making sand come out of it. Actually, I don't like that. I don't like this part at all, to tell you the truth. I don't like it at all in video games. I don't like anything in video games that restricts your movement. It's never fun. This part's alright. I don't know, it's like, most of this is like... It's thematic, right? Like, it's supposed to be, here's the sand place, here's the ice place, here's the, you know, whatever, but... I don't know, like, what is this, a freezer? Like, it's an ice place, but it's also got, like, a metal around it? That's what this feels like. This feels like I'm in a freezer. Maybe that's how it's supposed to feel, but... There's nothing ethereal about a refrigerator. Oh, good. It's my fucking favorite thing in the whole game, this asshole. Yoko's actually pretty good at fighting these. Frost will do damage twice, and you don't really even have to react to his telegraphs. You can just like back roll away a couple times, and basically no matter what he does, he won't hit you. Unless maybe he does his like shield attack, because he has an attack where he'll like fire his shield out on the end of a chain. But then if you just duck under that, he'll never hit you. So if you backdash and then duck, if you backdash on Yoko and then like duck, he'll never hit you, no matter what he does. So these fucking bone serpents are like, okay, yeah, they do insane damage. And I don't know why. Like, I feel like there's no reason for these things to do 71 damage. This isn't the only place in the game. It's the only place in the game where they show up in the route that I take, or I skip like 30% of the castle because I don't care. But they are actually in other parts of the castle. They're in the secret part of the wizardry lab, I think. And then maybe one or two other places, but my point is I don't know why they do so much damage. I remember one time I was doing an attempt of this. I don't even remember if it was Julius mode or not, but I got to those guys and they hit me for like... I just like wandered into their fireballs and it did like 300 damage. So fucking weird. Speaking of so fucking weird, look at the weird little gremlin faces in the background here. This is inspired, at least. I mean, it's just kind of like hell, but it's like weird hell, you know? Like, I guess this is where demons come from, right? Okay, Abaddon. Time to talk about Abaddon on Yoko. I'm psyching myself up. So Abaddon on Yoko is really, really tricky. The issue with Abaddon is finding correct answers to all of his attacks, and Yoko actually... The reason that the Yoko fight on Abaddon is such a problem is because of his waterfall attack, which is where he'll like summon bugs from the top of one part of the screen, and then they'll like kind of fall down to the other part of the screen. If you are facing him when he does the waterfall attack on Yoko, you have basically no good options to deal with it. You can jump towards it and like use fire to like blast through the bugs and just barely pass through. But yeah, this is the attack I'm talking about. But that's really dangerous. If you go to the very farthest edge of, yeah, like I'm going to do it right here, that can also sometimes work if you anticipate it properly. If you like double jump and then swing your mace at the very top of like the screen, that sometimes works. But the issue with all of these is consistency. And actually, what you're supposed to do to deal with the waterfall attack on Yoko is just always be behind Abaddon. That's literally the best solution. So that way you always have the option to do what I just did there to avoid it, which is the only way you can actually consistently avoid this is by being up against the wall that they come from. And you can only do that if you're behind Abaddon. Being behind Abaddon, incidentally, also makes that straight line attack a lot easier to deal with. The only way you could deal with that otherwise and not take any damage from it is with a really well-timed ice attack. Otherwise, you're fucked. But if you're behind him and he does it, you can just slide kick under it like I've been doing. So that's what makes this fight so hard on Yoko, is that the optimal thing to do is to always be behind him, and sometimes Abaddon's patterns of movement mean that you just can't be behind him. Like, he can just go up against a wall and then face away from the wall so that you literally can't be behind him, and then he does his waterfall attack and you're just screwed. So it's It's like Abaddon's randomness is more consequential here than ever before. The silver lining is that Yoko gains health every time she kills a bug. So if you're taking a bunch of damage from his attacks, you can actually get a bunch of health by, doing this. Like rolling into a corner if he's doing the sideways U attack while facing you, or if he's doing the vertical U attack while facing you or not facing you. If you roll into a corner and just duck an attack, you'll gain a bunch of health back. So that's kind of the thing you have to do to deal with Abaddon, is it's not practical to consistently no damage him. So you just have to heal off whatever damage you do take by killing the bugs whenever you can. So that's the hardest thing in the whole game, in my opinion, is the Abaddon fight as Yoko. It is actually possible to no damage it. I've done it in isolation, but it's really, really fucking hard, and you literally do just have to get lucky, because if he walks up against a wall and then faces you and then does the waterfall attack, which he could just very easily do, you have to do really, really precise shit to not get hit by it. Here I'm waiting to regenerate a little bit of MP, because there's another one of the chickens that summons shit up ahead. I actually like this part of the Abyss. This is the one part of the Abyss that I think actually looks pretty cool. Because I like the statues and I like space. The one silver lining with the Abaddon fight on Yoko is that, well, actually there is no silver lining. I was going to say that it doesn't actually take that long because of Frost, but it actually does take that long because you have to spend so much time constantly getting behind him. It's not like, I mean, if you're in a safe spot ahead of time, then you will have time to start and finish a Frost cast, but you need to be like really sure you're safe before you use Frost. Which I would say Frost is really the only viable attacking option for Abaddon, because you can hit him from anywhere. You can kind of move while you're doing it, which you can't do while you're trying to wind up lightning. And Frost is actually the only good solution for responding to his straight line attack if he's facing you. So those three combined, I mean, and you don't want to try to swap to a spell on short notice. You should basically, I'm of the opinion that you should just pick one spell to use per boss fight and just use that the whole time, because these bosses tend to behave in ways that are very they change their behavior pretty quickly, and they do things pretty fast, and you don't want to put yourself in a position where you need to swap spells at short notice under pressure. I mean, not that any spell really would help you with Abaddon. Because something that I thought about doing, if you watch my Julius fight with Abaddon, I use the crucifix, the boomerang, to destroy it. When he does the waterfall attack, I double jump and I use the boomerang to destroy the bugs before they get to me. And you might think that I could do that with lightning. Like double jump up and then use lightning to destroy the waterfall bugs before they get to you. But the problem with that is that if you have to do that preemptively. You have to double jump and shoot the lightning before the bugs come in, because by the time the bugs are actually there, like, it's pretty much too late. And more importantly, lightning doesn't... Well, you have to do a preemptively on Julius too, but the problem is that the lightning doesn't know that the bugs are there. Whenever you cast lightning on Yoko, it will always arc down towards Abaddon, which is not what you want. You want it to either move straight forward and destroy all the bugs, or like stay in place and destroy all the bugs, and it doesn't do that. So every time you cast lightning, it like arcs down towards Abaddon, which means that it doesn't destroy all the waterfall bugs, which means you get hit. So it would be nice. So I wouldn't want to swap spells anyway, and swapping spells doesn't actually help for Abaddon. For the Soma fight, Yoko has a pretty easy time. It's a lot like Zephyr, where it's like, the reason this fight is hard is maintaining distance, but Frost lets Yoko do a bunch of damage while still maintaining basically as much distance as you want. As long as an enemy is still on the screen, Frost will still hit them and it'll hit them fast. And Phase 2 of of Soma is... Fuck it, this is Dracula. Phase 2 of Dracula is good. It's good for Frost too, because Frost, I'm pretty sure, will hit him twice. Yep. So, now he's taking fucking mega damage all the time. He'll take mega damage when I'm close to him, he'll take mega damage when I'm far away from him. And as in the Grim Reaper fight, if you fuck up, Yoko's... And in the Grim Reaper fight and the Abaddon fight, if you fuck up, Yoko's regular attack will give you a sort of a safety cushion. And it's actually smart to use Yoko's regular attack during the course of fighting Dracula, because you need to be able to react to his jump really fast. So I usually just do one Frost spell, then just regularly attack him. So that way when he starts jumping, I'll be ready for it. The only caveat to Frost hitting him twice is that he does... The part of his body that gets hit the second time does need to be on the screen for him to actually get hit. So I'll always hit him twice when he does the jump, but trying to hit him twice with Frost when he does the Abaddon attack is riskier, because you have to stay closer to him for longer. But still doable, thanks to Yoko's really long backdash. That's interesting. He was on screen, but that Frost attack didn't hit him twice because he was doing the cast animation for the bug attacks, which meant his shoulders like dipped down a bit. Oh, this was so scary. I was afraid I was going to die there. Because he can actually fuck you up really badly if you don't run under him when he jumps. You can get hit by like a harpy centipede and then a harpy arrow and then the fire wave from Dracula, and you can literally take like 400 damage right there and just die. And that's what I was afraid was going to happen for a second there, like right in the home stretch, but fortunately that didn't happen. Or the other thing I was worried about was that maybe I wouldn't die exactly that second, but now I'd be trapped up against the wall, and if he did the Abaddon attack, the bug attack, then I would be fucked. But fortunately, he was literally one hit away from death, so I made a mistake at right at the moment that I could make a mistake and still get away with it. So that was very fortunate. To fuck up when I did, and I don't actually even know what I screwed up there. I'd have to go back and look at it again. I mean, obviously I didn't run under him in time, but I don't know what exactly hit me or what exactly I did wrong. So that's Julius mode with Yoko. It's actually a lot of fun. It's like I mentioned, it's a lot about rhythm. It's about the rhythm of the fire attacks. It's about the rhythm of ice. Lightning is kind of boring and bad, so I probably avoid it, but it's really fun to be able to take advantage of Yoko's high movement and her high damage to kill things really fast. Some of the boss fights kind of suck. The Grim Reaper sucks, Abaddon sucks. The Bat Company sucks. The Bat Company kind of always sucks. Paranoia sucks, but Dracula's fun, Gurgoth is fun, Zephyr's fun. A lot of it's still pretty fun. I actually think I prefer playing as Julius to playing as Yoko, though. Even though Yoko's high movement is really cool, Julius just has more tools and more... He doesn't have the same kind of horizontal movement, but he has more vertical movement, which I found to be more generally applicable and useful. So if I was going to rank them, I don't know if I would rank them. Anyway, that's Yoko. Next up is going to be Alucard, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. And keep on Earth rockin'.